Marcia Stonehill with Melt the Ice. Today on Operation F.L.O.W, I have with me Dr. Vivienne Pierce McDaniel, our co-host, and back with us today is Dr. Angel Daniels from Bon Secours Memorial College of Nursing. Today we're together again to start part 2 of how the nursing profession can dismantle racism. Vivienne, Angel, thank you so much for coming back for this critical conversation, and please help us get started.
Well, as usual, I am always excited and happy to be here. And I just want to start with saying that in part 1, we really kind of talked about ourselves and our experiences. So today we are going to talk about some things that we can do to dismantle racism and to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I will pass it on to you, Angel.
Yes, thank you again for having me back. I agree. I think the last time we met, we set a great foundation for our conversation today. And I want to start because I think it's important that we start talking about action. Action starts within self-assessment of one's own bias. So, you know, if you're human, you're biased about something. And it may be that it's unconscious and it doesn't come to light until a situation or a scenario brings it to your attention, or maybe you are aware. You know, I've heard a lot of people say, I don't have a bias, I'm not racist, I love everybody. And you can love everybody, but that does not mean that you don't have some type of bias within. I think that's a good foundation to start our conversation with.
Thank you both very much for what you've said. And I can certainly attest to being one of those people who was, I'm going to say at this stage, who naively thought that my love and my acceptance of people was enough. And it was a rude awakening of sorts to realize that I indeed also carried some of my own biases. Of course, they were not hate, you know, because that's not where I was coming from. But that's why this conversation is so critical, because even though those of us who do have lots of love and lots of acceptance and want to do the right thing and care about people, which we hope is the majority of our nursing staff people, right? We have to look really hard and really deep inside ourselves at our biases. But I can tell you that my experience is that I wouldn't have found those biases on my own. And what I mean by that is I didn't see the biases until I was having conversations with people who are different than me. And I saw the expressions on their face after something I said, or they addressed it. And usually it was addressed extremely gracefully, you know, which I'm so amazed by. And it became very important to me. What I realized is, you know, the natural response sometimes is, oh, but that wasn't my intention, right? And the next thing I had to learn is it doesn't matter if it was my intention. I said it and it has an impact. But what's more important is that I learned, and that that got me on a path of researching more, studying more, having more conversations, and only to realize that there's so much outside of my own experience and my own perspective that I was completely unaware of. So instead of it being something that's so uncomfortable and raises our defenses, it can actually be a beautiful journey of learning and building relationships. So that's what I want to bring to the table today.
Yeah, that was, I was taking in everything that you were saying. And yes, that is what it's all about. You know, it's not about trying to blame someone or trying to make someone feel as though they should feel guilty about things that happened in the past. It's about discussing them, having those crucial conversations, and just getting it out there so that it can be addressed appropriately. And one of the things that I always tell people, especially in nursing, you have to if you use cultural humility, you know, you hear me talking about that all the time. If you use cultural humility, if you use that as a framework, that you can dismantle racism. I'm not saying that's the only thing that you would use, but it certainly is a good start, and you can dismantle racism. And you can also because it requires you to do very, very deep self reflection. And when you do self reflection, you look back and you say, you think, when I said that, oh, she looks okay for a dark-skinned person. When you make a statement like that, and you sit back and you reflect and you say, now, was that the right thing to say to a person of color? I mean, because that's really ridiculous, you know, to say, but I've had people to say that in front of me. But when you sit back and you reflect on it, because people talk all the time and never reflect.
Right.
But when you sit back and reflect on it, you realize how, for lack of a better term, idiotic it sounds to say something like that about a person. So those are the, you know, reflection, lifelong learning. You cannot learn all of this in a day. You need to continuously learn about it. Be resourceful, you know, and talk to people. So that's one of the things that I promote.
I think you made a valid point, Marcia, when you said building that relationship and working on it together. You know, that multicultural collaborative relationship, you know, doing it together, learning from each other,
Yeah.
and taking that journey to make things better. I think embracing that it is the crucial step to getting where we want to be. It takes a partnership sometimes for that to happen.
Mhm. Absolutely.
I honestly don't think I could have learned the things that I've learned thus far as I continue to learn, you know, by sitting in a class. You know, it's been because of cultural immersion. I've heard you, Vivienne, use that term, or maybe
Mhm.
the one that brought that up, you know, that it's just, it's through the relationships, it's through the conversations with other people that I've become so acutely aware of these things, right?
Mhm.
I just really want to remind people, you know, that what is so critical, as much as we may want to apologize or be defensive by what we've said, as I said, there's so much grace. And I had one woman say to me, and I would love to hear what Angel and Vivienne have to say about this, but she said, you know what, just say thank you for bringing that to my attention.
Mhm.
And then work on it inside yourself. You know, nobody's looking for an apology, and unless you were being extremely rude, you know, that's a different situation. But when it's that unconscious bias that comes rolling out of us and we don't even realize it until we've said it, then it just correct ourselves and
Yeah.
and continue to grow. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that you said that that people are so gracious when they do it. They're so gracious when they do it. And I think that some of that comes from the years of not being able to say what you really want to say, or, and I'm speaking from my experience. I'm speaking from the perspective of a Black woman living in this society. I think a lot of the gracefulness comes from not being able to say, there was a time when we could not say anything to anybody. I mean, we had to move off of the sidewalk. If we were walking on the sidewalk and a white person came, we would have to step off of the sidewalk. So what I'm saying is, I think a lot of that comes from the fact that we could not open our mouths and say things. If you made us upset, we couldn't say anything.
Right.
So I think that's what that gracefulness come from, and I've actually seen it. I recall something that that I said to you, Masha, and I mean, I won't talk about it specifically, but I remember something. I remember pulling you aside and saying, Masha, for, I mean, if you don't mind me sharing, I will.
Absolutely share it. This is what this is learning about.
Yeah, we were in the presence of some pastors, and you had befriended one of the pastors, but we were in front of other people, and I pulled you aside and I said, Masha, please refer to him as Reverend so and so, because other people might be offended if you're calling him by his first name.
Mhm.
Even though they don't know the relationship you have with him, and it's just a matter of respect. And it was that also that other thing too about Dr. Grant, when Dr. Grant was doing that commercial. Well, it wasn't really a commercial. They were doing something about COVID, and the reporter referred to him as Ernest Grant, and my son said, you need to spread some respect on Dr. Grant's name, like you spread butter on your bread or something silly like that. So, it's all about respect. And so I appreciate that you recognize that. That's one of the things I love about you, is that you recognize and you don't get offended when it's brought to your attention. So I think I probably went all the way to left field. I'll let Angel answer the question.
Well, no, I think you set a good foundation for me to lead into. I think that, having that courage, as a woman, I call it myself, for years, when I've experienced that, whether it's microaggression, macroaggression, people not knowing that they're, saying something to hurt me or offend me in some way, I let it slide. I didn't have that courage to have my voice be heard and speak up and say, hey, can I talk to you about this? Or you made me feel that way. And that's because of years and years of suppressing those feelings and thoughts and not feeling like I have the right to say so. But now, as I've grown and, come into learning more about it and feeling more comfortable in myself to speak up, it has helped me address those potential situations. I think too, Marsha, you made a valid point too about education. A lot of these things you can't just put in a training module and say, okay, we've taught this. You should know this now and it's going to go away. It's not, because there's no accountability either in these situations. And I think that's the biggest thing, is accountability. Hold people accountable. Don't just write nice statements. Don't just have these nice training modules. And now we're all diverse, equity, inclusive, justice is there. No, we have to start holding people accountable and addressing those situations.
You talk about accountability. That was something that I talked about this morning in my interview about Dr. Bernadine Lacey. I talked about accountability and holding people accountable, holding these organizations, these healthcare organizations accountable. These healthcare organizations need to change their policies so that they're holding people accountable. So I'm glad that you brought that up about accountability. It was something that you said also, and something that Masha said, and I kind of lost my train of thought. So if I remember it, I'll come back to it. But it had to do with, oh, I know what it was. And I don't know how I could have possibly forgotten it. One thing about me is I have never held my tongue. My mom used to say, and she still says it, and I'm an adult and she still says it, is that one day your tongue will be your ruin. So I have never held my tongue. If you say something to me that I don't like, I am going to say something to you. And I know both of you can attest to that because in conversation, I'm sure that I have had to say, wait a minute, so that's one of the things. And I'm thankful God knew to have me be born in the era that I was born in, because I know I wouldn't have made it through any of those things that happened before 1965. I would not be sitting here talking to you today because I would not have held my tongue. Now, I'm not an angry person. And I try my best not to come across as aggressive, because sometimes when you are candid, that's what people think. But no, if I see something, I am going to talk to you about it, and I will be as respectful as possible, and I won't do it in a way that's humiliating. But yes, I must have that discussion and have that talk with you.
And also, I think that it's important to recognize that it's okay in people not think, well, am I overthinking this? Or maybe I'm just reacting and it's not really what I thought it was. Trying to talk yourself out of, was that really offensive to me? Or, I've had that situation myself. I had a situation in where, it was my first day on the job, and, I was the only Black person there. It was my first day. We were having a Christmas party. And, one of the ladies came up to me after the party and she said, "Oh, thank you for bringing the collard greens. They were so good." And I looked at her and walked away, and I had to ask myself, I said, did she really say that to me? Was she really, So I'm trying to talk myself out of believing that statement and doing anything about it. And I held on to it for so long that eventually I had to say something. But that time had passed that I could have responded in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So that comfortability again in being able to address. Because one thing I've learned, and one thing my grandmother told me, people will never forget how you made them feel. Mm-hmm. They might forget what you did or how you did it, but they'll never forget how you made them feel about something.
And they will have all of the feelings and none of the facts most of the time.
Right.
So.
I really, we said we wanted to try to keep this particular part 2 in a shorter version. So I'm going to pull us into wrapping up. I think this has been a fabulous conversation. And my final thoughts are that it comes down to communication, is what I hear all of us saying. And it comes down to the ability to have conversations that get awkward and uncomfortable, but they're necessary. And we do want to challenge our nursing profession to take the leadership and being the examples in our communities and in your families and your work environments and in your community, to demonstrate how to have these conversations, because if we don't do it, who will? Vivienne, do you have any final words?
Yes, I'm not going to use the great words of, I'm not going to end with that today, because Bernadine Lacey, Dr. Lacey is still on my mind. So one of the things that Dr. Lacey said was that community is not just a place, it's actually a state of mind and how you think. And so that's kind of what I want to leave you with. I want you to ponder what I said, that community is not just a place. It's not just a place where you may live. It is a state of mind. And so in essence, it is your way of thinking. And it's your way of thinking a lot of times that gets you in trouble when you're met, with these type situations, when you encounter something like racism. So I just want you to I want to leave you with that thought.
Angel, thank you, Vivienne.
Yes. Yes, I would like to say, I think Vivienne said it very well. I think you also said it well, Marsha, that number one, communication is key. I think that's the foundation that, can resolve a lot, to lead by example and have leadership, start leading by example and addressing and holding people accountable. Because when we do that and it trickles into nursing and it trickles into healthcare, then it also flows into the patients and populations of the community we serve. So we're starting here, and it's that trickle effect will make a big change.
Vivienne, Angel, thank you for this wonderful conversation today. And I want to invite our listeners to look for a part 3. Thank you both.
Thank you.